but I believe you don't need to have a name. This lady lived a life that was pleasing to God, and it was so pleasing that he put her in the Bible. I don't believe we got everything that Elisha did and all his miracles and the great things that the prophet Elisha did while he was a prophet in Israel, but God chose to put this great woman in here. We'll start in verse number 8 this morning. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman. To stop there and say that's God's opinion, by the way. She was a great woman in God's eyes. And she constrained him to eat bread, and so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold, now I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and turned into the chamber, and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thy handmaid. And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we are grateful to be here this morning. We're grateful to be in your house. We're thankful for the freedoms we have in this country as we continue to think about in our country the veterans that have given so much for us. God, we just want to thank you for them this morning. Father, as we look at this passage, as we look at this great woman, I pray that you would open up our eyes, Father, to the things that you'd have us to see about her. She's in your word, your pure word, for a reason. And this morning, as we look at her life, I pray that our eyes and our hearts would be open and we'd be able to learn something that would help us to be able to walk better for you. Pray that if there's anybody in this room this morning that is not saved, that has never put their faith and trust in your Son, Jesus Christ, I pray this morning they would make that choice. Pray that you'd be with your saints here this morning. God, they're weary. They've worked in this world all week long. Some of them going through hard times, and I pray, Father, that you'd uplift them, encourage them to walk with you, to be able to trust in you. We do lift up our pastor this morning. Be with him as he opens up your word and preaches this morning. God, I pray that you just bless him, bring him back to us safely. We ask your Holy Spirit of God to come and to meet with us. It is pointless for us to be here without you here. So we ask you to come, speak to our hearts, and show us how it is that we can be better. God, for you, we pray out of your word. In Jesus' name, amen. A phrase occurs 3 times in this passage. It occurs in verse number 8. It also occurs in verse number 11. And then it occurs in verse number 18. And the phrase is, it fell on a day. It fell on a day. The phrase, it fell on a day, isn't speaking of happenstance or coincidence. It speaks of opportunity. And opportunity is something that is dependent totally on how you react to it. It simply presents itself to you and leaves the rest to you to decide what is going to happen. And I believe that's the reason this woman is here, is because things just happened and opportunities came in her life, and God felt that her reaction to that was great enough for you and I to glean something from. Everybody has had opportunities in their life, some of them good, some of them bad, and you have regrets both ways. You have regrets for not doing things that you wish, that stock tip that you got and that you laughed at, and that today you'd be independently wealthy if you had just put your money into Enron and you'd be good to go. And then if you were one of those people that put your money into Enron, you have the other feeling of that opportunity, that it's all gone now. Thomas Edison said this: we often miss opportunity because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. And a lot of times an opportunity will come your way, but you look it over and it just seems like maybe that's going to take a little bit too much effort. We are the microwave generation. If it's not right now, we were blown away on our vacation. The Lord blessed us. We were able to, we did a cruise for our vacation. And I was blown away. I know that mankind is impatient. I know that because I live with myself every day. But it is magnified when you're with people in a place where there is much abundance of food. It will not run out. And just how rude they are to each other in getting to the food first, as if that extra 5 minutes would cause you to shrivel. And may I say, no one that I was on board the ship was going to shrivel away and die. I did notice, it has been like 9 years since my wife and I had done one. I did notice that now they provide little scooters for people to ride. And I thought, boy, it just gives all kinds of opportunities, doesn't it, to be able to do that. Theodore Roosevelt said, "It is often that a man can make opportunities for himself. It is not often that a man can make opportunities for himself, but he can put himself in such shape that when or if the opportunities come, he is ready." And I believe that's what this lady did. She put herself in the right spot. She lived her life for God in such a way that when the opportunity came, she was ready for it. Someone else said, that person that is unknown, they said this: "Opportunities are never lost. Someone else will take the one you miss." And that's how you live your life every day. You live your life with opportunities, but you live it that way spiritually as well. And sometimes spiritually, God opens up a door for you, and you look through the doorway and you decide maybe what's on the other side of that door is just going to be too much work for you to do. Sometimes we sit in a missions conference and we watch what missionaries have given up in order to go to the field, and we look at that and go, boy, I don't think I could ever do that. That's just too much for me to give up. But God says, that's okay. I'll give that opportunity to someone else. And I wonder spiritually how much we miss because we look too much through the human glasses at life. And we don't look enough through the Word of God and what God would have for us. And if you'd look through the Word of God at an opportunity, you would see that it's not that much to give up. And when I give up something for God, I'm truly, really, I'm not giving anything up. Because I will get so much in return. So let's look at verse number 8 through 11 first. I want you to notice the opportunity to be a blessing. Verses 4 through 8. And anybody can be a blessing. Anybody. It doesn't take millions of dollars to be a blessing. I got blessings this morning. My phone went off several times this morning, and all it said several times was, "Praying for you today." That's a blessing. That's a blessing to know that someone took my name and my circumstance before the throne room of God and said, "God, just bless him today." That's a blessing. That didn't cost any money except for the phone bill that it cost to send it my way. And they're paying that anyways. Opportunity to be a blessing. Notice it says it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. You say, well, it's just one of those things. No, she stood there in her house and watched him go by and watched him go by and watched him go by. And I believe preacher said during missions conference, something that Jim White said years ago, never pass, and this is exactly, never pass on an impulse to give. Never shun that. Because it might just not be your greatness inside of you coming out. It might be the Spirit of God saying, hey, you need to be a blessing here. You need to do something. And let me say, when that comes, you can always afford what God wants you to do. Maybe you don't get the second Big Mac this week, but you can afford what God wants you to do. And by the way, you probably don't need that second one, if it's beef you're eating anyways. She stood in her house and she would watch him walk by, and she just had this crazy idea that maybe this guy would be hungry and tired and thirsty. And so what did she do? She constrained him. Now this says to me that this took several times. This took several times for him to come in. It took work for her to get him into the house. You know, the first time it's like, passing by, and this is a stranger asking you to come in their house. Well, there's a horror movies made of that. So we don't want to do that right away. So you got to feel out the situation. Elisha didn't want to end up hanging in a basement by his feet. He just search out the situation, figure out exactly what's going on. But I want you to notice about this opportunity, there was the importunity of the opportunity. That's clever, I know. If you go over to Luke chapter 11, the word importunity is in your Bible. And the Lord Jesus Christ gives it to us when he talks about the story of a friend in Luke 11, verses 5 through 10. And he said unto them, which of you shall have a friend, and shall go unto him at midnight, and say unto him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves. For a friend of mine in his journey is come to me, and I have nothing to set before him. And he from within shall answer and say, Trouble me not, the door is now shut. My children are with me in bed, I cannot rise and give thee. I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him, because he is his friend, yet because of his what? Importunity, he will rise and give him as he needeth. Sometimes your opportunity is going to take a little bit of constraining. It might take a little bit of work on your part to see the action side of it take place. It took her constraining Elisha to come into the house, which a lot of times is why we don't get to be a blessing to other people, because we don't want the bill or we don't want the work that it takes. Either one. We don't want to be put out at all. But let me say, to be a blessing, you're going to have to be put out. To be a blessing to someone, it is going to inconvenience you. And we're a generation of convenience, which is why a lot of times, which maybe I'll ask this, how many of you know your neighbors? We're not a generation of people that know our neighbors. I lost a neighbor on this side. They lost their house, which was sad, so they're not there. But we know the next one there. We know these here. And the Susie down the street, she brings me fried rice when I shovel her driveway in the winter. That didn't happen right away. I did it for a winter, and it didn't happen. But the second time I got fried rice, and I'm like, I'm in now. When a Chinese lady's cooking your fried rice, you accept it. You don't ask questions about that. You thank you. Then you go back over there. I think there was more snow. I just missed a spot or two. We're not a generation, we don't know our neighbors, we don't wave, we don't say hi, we don't sit on the front porch, we don't do those things. We don't want to be inconvenienced. Because it's so inconvenienced to know someone and to talk to them. That's inconvenience. Which is why we're not a blessing. You could be a blessing to the people in this room, but we don't, because we don't want to be inconvenienced. They sit on that side, and I'm over here. Of course, you're the Fourniers, you move all over the place like a bouncy ball. You're over there and over there. The importunity of the opportunity. Listen, it took her work in order for this to happen. This is a great story. But it took her work. It took her constraining. It took her putting forth effort and effort and effort in order to do it. But we don't want to be inconvenienced. We don't want to be put in that situation. Do you ever be involved in trying to be a blessing to someone? Let me give you the perfect scenario of it. You're out to eat. You have this great idea. I'm going to pick up the check. But you're out to eat with one of those prideful people who doesn't let other people pay for their food. Raise your hand if you've been there. Now, let me just stop right there. If you're the prideful person, let me tell you what you do. You ruin the act of being a blessing for the other person. Someone wants to be a blessing to you and pay for your meal. Well, oh, come on. God is giving them an opportunity to be a blessing to you. Say yes. And if you want to practice, take me out to eat. Then I want you to notice the importance of this opportunity, verses 9 and 10. She said unto her husband, Behold, now I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber. So it started out as being just as a place where he could come and rest and get a drink of water and get something to eat. And then she noticed that this was a holy man of God and that maybe he needed a little bit more than just a meal. Maybe he needed a place to stay the night. So not only was she going to be inconvenienced now by the food that she had to prepare, but now they're going to add a room on. And she's going to have to upkeep that. And they're going to furnish the room, verse 10. Talk about being inconvenienced. When was the last time you had a thought of adding a couple rooms onto your house so that when an evangelist comes through, he can have a place to stay? Why? Because we don't want to be inconvenienced. That's going to be costs and money and yeah. But here's a lady. What did she want to do? She just wanted to be a blessing. She just wanted to be a blessing. Then notice verse 11. And she built the room, and like asking him to come in to eat took a while. She built the room, listen, without even knowing that he was going to use it. In verse 11, it fell on a day that he came thither and turned into the chamber and lay there. There was that impending opportunity. She did something just in case this were to happen. She had a plan. She planned to be a blessing. You ever do that? You ever plan to be a blessing? I will do this today and that today, and I'm going to go out of my way so that I can be there at this time to help this person do that. When you're a blessing to someone else, it does something for you. It helps you. It will put a strange thing on your face. Some of you haven't seen that in a long time. You will smile. It will make you feel good about yourself. Some of you need to feel that right now. Feel good about yourself. When was the last time you took an opportunity to be a blessing? See, for this lady, it just fell on a day. It just happened. She was aware of what was around her, and she noticed this and noticed that and put some pieces together and then came up with a plan and was a blessing to the prophet Elijah. But it was only because she took the time to grab the opportunity and to be a blessing to someone else. As our wonderful Obamacare takes over and our wonderful society as a whole begins to continue and hurtle down the hill, we are going to need to be more of a blessing to each other than we've ever been before. You say, oh, that's just fatalistic and horrible. Just look around at all the other countries, ladies and gentlemen, and that'll explain it all. Plus the fact that the people that are not upset about it, we're all paying for their stuff anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Then I want you to notice not only the opportunity to be a blessing, but notice the outpouring of God's blessing here. Verse 12, he said to Gehazi, his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And she said unto him, and he said unto him, say now unto her. There's the funny thing. Elisha wouldn't even talk to her. He had to talk through Gehazi in order to get the message. That's just a different culture thing that we don't understand at all. You would find that rude, right? If I took Josh Sheedy around with me everywhere, and if you wanted to talk to me, you had to tell Josh, and then Josh would tell me, then I would tell Josh, and he would tell you. We'd call that rude. Well, this is just difference in culture. It's okay. There'd probably be a booklet somewhere. Somebody wrote about this, just the rudeness of Elisha, whatever. Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is it to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. Notice in this outpouring of God blessings, there's humility here from her. Her response to the man of God wanting to do something for her, for everything that she had done for him, was, I dwell among my own people. She was contented with her position and her place in life. She didn't do this. You ever around somebody like that does something because they're expecting something? That wasn't her intent here. She did this because this is something she wanted to do to be a blessing to the man of God, and she didn't expect anything, nor did she want anything in return. She had everything that she needed. She was contented with her position and her place in life. She didn't need anything. She didn't need a thank you. She was happy. She was blessed when he would come and sit at her table and eat her food and go up there and lay in that bed. That this thrilled her to death. But see, when I'm faithful at doing the things that God wants me to do you know what God is going to do automatically? God is going to bless you. It's just what he does. It's nothing you have to ask for. It's just going to happen. And that's all God is trying to do for this lady. But in humility, she said, I'm okay. I'm fine where I'm at. I don't need anything. Well, Elisha didn't like that answer at all. So they get back together in verse 14, and he said, what then is to be done for her? Well, Gehazi had noticed something. And he said, well, she has no children. And then notice the horrible thing that he says. And her husband is old. But then you have to realize reality is reality. If the guy's old, the guy is old. I mean, I'm sorry. No one did that to you. It just happens. You live every day, and eventually there you are, and you're old. Don't take offense. I didn't make you get old. Matter of fact, you were here a long time before I was. A lot of that was done to you before I ever existed. And yet you're blaming me right now. That's horrible. There's humility there in verse 13, and then notice down in verse 16. He says, verily, she hath no child, verse 14, her husband is old. And he said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door, and he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And I want you to notice the hesitation here for God's blessing in verse 16. And I'll break down this for you. First of all, she says, nay, my Lord. There's the rejection of what he has to say. This was a place, and here's where I want you to connect with this lady. This was a place she didn't want to go. This wasn't an area that she didn't want to talk about this. This was not free reign conversation area for her. And see, we don't understand that because we live in a different culture. We live in a different society altogether where the norm is to abort the kid so I don't have to deal with it. That's our norm. That's how we raise our kids in our public schools, to teach them that that's okay to do. Murder is fine because, after all, you're inconvenienced and you can't continue your lascivious lifestyle if that thing is around your house. So she says to him, she says, nay, my Lord. She rejects it. She says, I'm happy. And notice, go back up to what she said to him before, I dwell among my own people. She was happy and contented where she was. She wasn't asking God for anything. And listen, she didn't do this to get anything. And when this subject was brought up, it was immediate, no, we don't talk about that. She says, nay, my Lord, thou man of God, but she was still respectful in what she said. She understood who she was talking to. Remember that Gehazi said her husband is old. I want you to go over to 1 Samuel chapter 1, if you would. And I want you to look at culture. Say, why was this a no-no of a subject? Because there was something about children in this society that meant something. 1 Samuel chapter 1, we begin the story of Samuel. There was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of Mount Ephraim. I'm glad I live in Toledo. And his name was Elkanah, the son of Jehoram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. I'm glad my dad's name is Paul. That's just easy. He had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Then said Elkanah her husband to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? Let me say this. Elkanah said all that because sometimes husbands just say stuff. Because, ma'am, when your husband sees distress, what does he want to do? He wants to fix it. That's how God made him. And so why did he say that? Because he wanted to fix it. But believe you me, he knew the answer to every one of those questions. Culture said without children was a disgrace. Culture said without children, you're an embarrassment. Boy, how we've changed. How we've pulled away from that. So here Hannah is, and I still don't understand the two-wife thing. That just creates lots of issues anyways. But beyond that subject, the obvious takes place when one has children and the other doesn't. Because the one with children knows that she has found great favor in the eyes of her husband. Although I don't know that Peninnah was really reading the situation correctly. Because according to your Bible, he loved Hannah more. So that's culture. That's where this lady right here finds herself. She finds herself in a place when the man of God says about this time and season next year, she says, nay. No. Not talking about it. Why? Well, Gehazi had already called it out. Her husband's old. Go to Abraham and Sarah. Sarah did what? She laughed. Why did she laugh? Well, I don't know. When you're looking at 100, it's kind of a funny subject. It's just, it brings that out. And sometimes we're so, we read the Word of God and we don't put ourselves there. We step out of it and we sit back piously and go, oh, I can't believe Sarah would laugh at the Lord. She's 100 years old. And someone said you're going to have a baby. I don't know, that's funny. And sometimes not really funny, ha-ha. It's kind of freaky, scary funny. And it's like, why is this happening now? Type of thing. So she says to him, in verse 16, nay, my Lord, thou man of God. She's still respectful. She understands who she's talking to and who she's addressing. After all, in verse number 9, she said, I perceive that this is an holy man of God. So she understood, number one, who she was talking to and who the message was coming from. But you understand, in her culture, in her society, she was a lady that was not looked on well. And don't you know that argument and that discussion between her and her husband had been dealt with long ago. And so she says, nay, we're not going there. We're not going. She didn't want to be disrespectful to him. But then she says, the end of verse 16, she says, do not lie unto thine handmaid. She says, I can't handle the pain if what you're saying is not true. Because I've already dealt with that pain year after year after year after year after year after year. We've already been down that road, we've already crossed that bridge, and we've burned it. And we decided as a couple we weren't going back. We decided this is what God was having our life to be, and we weren't going back that way. But isn't God wonderful? Notice the happiness in verse 17. You say, where? First 4 words. I say, well, it doesn't say happy. Yeah, I know. And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her according to the time of life. You know how much happiness was in that home? You know how much joy was in that home? Why? Because she decided one day as she was looking out her window and saw a man passing every day that maybe that guy would like something to eat and maybe he would like something to drink. And then as they got to know him, she perceived he was a holy man of God and was doing God's work. And then she thought, maybe we'll build him a room. And because she did those things, you know what God decided? God decided, well, the one thing that's bothered you for all these years and the one pain and the one ache in your heart that you've had, I'll fix. And brings into their home much joy and happulation. Happulation, there's a good word. She didn't ask for it. She didn't barter for it. She didn't bargain for it. All she was doing was just being a blessing to someone else that at first she didn't even know, but got to know. And then God's blessing because of her faithfulness and just doing small things. Listen, she wasn't leading thousands of people. She just took care of God's man. That's all she did. And God blessed her because of her faithfulness. She was contented and happy where she was. I really believe she was. But God sees down into the heart a lot deeper. Man can't see the heart. And sometimes we hide things and just deal with things, and that's just the way that life is. You'll never hear Sam Gipp ever complain about being in pain. And every minute of every day of his life, he is in pain, and now they've told him there's probably not much they can do about headaches and other things that he deals with. And you know what he's done? He's just decided that's just the way that God has things to be, and we're just going to continue on down the road. She decided that she wanted to be a blessing, and she took that opportunity, and then there was the outpouring of God's blessing. And then I wanted you to notice in verses 18 through 37, the outcry of her heart. You see, it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, and it fell on a day that he came into the house. But verse 18 says, when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers, and he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died. You see, that's why she said no. She said, no, I don't want that. Because if what you're saying is only going to bring me more pain, I don't want that. But I want you to notice how she handles this opportunity. You say, this is an opportunity? Most assuredly. See, when good things come from God, we use that as an opportunity to praise his name and to let everybody know what great things God has done for us. But when the bad comes, it's just as good of a situation, and sometimes better. Because when you're in a bad situation and you're praising God, I know this, that's not you. Because if you had your opportunity to really let us know what's going through your head, we wouldn't even want to be in the room. But that's the blessing of being a child of God. So here they are now enjoying little Elisha grow up. See, that's his name? I don't know, I just guessed. I just figured if Elisha was the guy that said you're going to have a baby. See, it's not in there. It is today. It's in there. Imagine, it doesn't matter if dad is old. Imagine how proud dad was. Imagine how much mom loved him. And just the excitement that brought to the house. So he goes to work with dad, as little boys like to do, with 800,000 questions of how it's being done and why it's being done and why wouldn't you do it this way, and how come you're not letting me touch that, and how come I can't come over there, and could I just stand here, could I just do this, how come you're not answering me, Dad, you're ignoring me, I just have a couple questions, there's just something that I'd like to know, and you've just been standing there staring off into space, and I just really wanted to know why it was that you're doing that and why you're standing that way. Why'd you say that to him? Did he do something wrong? I sure would like to know. That's little boys. They want to know. Why? They're inquisitive. And that's their life. Say, how do you get that? You read into the story. These are real people. This is a real mom. This is a real dad. This is a real boy. He was jumping off stuff. He was swinging from stuff. He was throwing things. He was breaking stuff. He probably went up into Elisha's chamber and just ransacked it. All that stuff happened. Why? Because that's a boy. These weren't spiritual, pious, holy people that walked around holding candles. This guy's a farmer. He's out harvesting crops in the field. Verse 19, a servant or a lad brings him to the house. But dad doesn't come with him. Why? Well, mom's going to take care of it, right? Dad's got to work. Just a headache? Oh, see your mom, kid. Dad don't fix stuff like that. Say, well, I do. Well, you're a different dad than I am. Let's go see Mom. They don't want to see me anyways. So he goes in to see Mom. Mom picks him up and holds him. They sit together. Until about noon, verse 20 says. And then he died. Horrible. And notice there's no screaming, there's no anxiety, there's no panic. There's no flipping out, there's no throwing things. Notice what she does. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door upon him and went out. And she called her husband and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well. If that's the whole conversation she had with her husband, she didn't tell him. She didn't say a word to him. Because he's wondering, what are you going to bother him for? It's not a new moon or Sabbath. It shall be well. This was something she deemed important enough for her to handle. Because she had had the discussion with the man of God and said, no, don't be lying to me. Don't be doing that to me. I didn't ask for this. Verse 24. Then she saddled an ass and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So she went and came into the man of God to Mount Carmel. And came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her. And say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered what? So why would you say that? She wasn't interested in talking to the servant. You ever go through something terrible and bad and heartbreaking? And sometimes people in their wonderful grace say dumb things. Happens because we as people, we want to say stuff, and a lot of times we don't know what to say. So we say the first thing that comes to our head, and that's generally not a good thing. You should keep it to yourself. But we're people, and so we make mistakes and do that stuff. You and I, what do? We run straight to God. I'm not worried about your opinion. I don't need your opinion. I hope you're praying for me. Great. But I want to talk to God because God's the one that's going to fix this. God's going to be the one that takes care of that. And for the people in the Old Testament, how did they get to God? Through the prophet. So when the servant comes up with all these questions, she's like, just step aside. I need to get to God. That's who I need to talk to. So she says to her husband, it shall be well. Really doesn't say much to him. To Gehazi, she says, it is well. Somehow in her heart she has, when peace like a river attendeth my way. When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And I believe up to this point she's composed. She is not breaking down. She is in control of the situation. And she is headed for one thing. She is headed to find out what God is going to say, because her relationship with God was already in place before this took place. In the bad situation, she wasn't trying to figure out where God was or who he was. She knew who he was, and she knew where he was. And that's where she was going. Then I want you to notice verse number 27. It says, when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. You got that picture? You know someone has something to say when they hit the ground and they grab you by the feet. You might pay attention to what they have to say. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away, and the man of God said, let her alone. For her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Then she said, did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? She's heartbroken. She is devastated. She said, this is the reason I said no. Because I was happy and I was contented where I was in my life and what had God done for me, how he had blessed me, what he had given me, where he had put me, and what I was doing. I was contented doing that. And I did not want this. And notice, Elisha didn't even know. God hadn't told him. God hadn't given him a heads up. And sometimes you need to remember that when you go talk to your pastor and bring your problems. Sometimes he doesn't know. Because he doesn't know the situation. And you bring in your situation, which is mostly complicated by this point. And you want an answer today. He's like, boy, that's rough. I have to pray about that one. Elisha had no answer. Then he said to Gehazi, verse 29, gird up thy loins and take my staff in thine hand and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. And if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay thy staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. She is in grief. She is in pain. Her grief in verse 28 said that God deceived her, which was untrue. But if you listen to grief long enough, grief can say some nasty things. Pain in your heart can lead you astray. Your heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. And the situation you find yourself in may not be fair. You may not have asked for it. You may not like it. You may still be dealing with it 7-8 years later. But it's because you're listening to grief too much. But notice that grief didn't blind her. She knew where to go. She knew who to go to. And then grief didn't deafen her either. She listened when she got here. And the thing that I think is funny in the situation is she goes by Gehazi, doesn't want to talk to him. Comes straight to Elisha, talks to him in verse 28. Elisha then sends Gehazi to go do and lay the staff on the child. And in verse 30, she says, P.S., I'm not going nowhere. So sending the dude with the staff is a great thing. But I came here to talk to you because you get a hold of God. And that's what I need. And what does he do at the end of verse 30? And he arose and followed her. She said, we need God in this situation. God brought me here. God placed me here. I didn't ask for this. So she says, we need God to come, and we need God to work. Gehazi, in verse 31, comes, lays the staff on the child. End of the verse, the child is not awake. Verse 32, when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, laid upon his bed, and he went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and laid his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, call the Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, take up thy son. And she went in, and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. The grief that she was going through, the hardship that she was dealing with, did not keep her from going to the right place to get the answer that she needed. See, what's the opportunity there? The opportunity in a bad situation is to come out with a relationship with God. It might get cloudy in the middle. Grief might make you say some pretty dumb things. You ever said dumb things to God in the middle of a bad situation? You just kind of gave him your opinion one day, and you felt about that big after it came out of your mouth. See, that's horrible, that's bad, yeah. But what are you going to come out as? The opportunity for her here was to come out with a relationship with God that she had before she went in. We're only failures in this Christian life if when God puts you through something, if you come out and he's not with you. If you come out bitter and mad and angry, you miss the point of what he was trying to accomplish in your life. See, her whole point was this: I didn't ask for this. And God's up in heaven going, I know, but just be patient. But we don't like to be patient. We let grief set in too much. But it didn't blind her and it didn't deafen her. Hudson Taylor said this, "I am so weak, I can't read my Bible, I can't even pray. I can only lie still in the arms of God like a little child and trust." George Mueller, after the death of his wife, wrote this, "I miss my wife in numberless ways and shall miss her yet more and more. But as a child of God, as a servant of the Lord Jesus, I bow. I'm satisfied with the will of my heavenly Father. I seek by perfect submission to his holy will to glorify him and kiss continually the hand that has thus afflicted me." See, grief will put you through a lot of stuff, and grief will make your mind and your heart go places it shouldn't go. But if you can come out on the other side saying, "I just want to kiss the hand that has afflicted me thus," you've come out like God wanted you to come out. See, there's going to be some times in your life where it's going to fall on a day. And you might look at it as a horrible situation, or you might look at it, maybe it's a great blessing from God. Either way, it's an opportunity for you as a child of God to either praise him in the good or to praise him in the bad. Johnny Erickson Tada said this, "In a way, I wish I could take to heaven my old tattered Everest and Jennings wheelchair. I would point to the empty seat and say, 'Lord, for decades I was paralyzed in this chair. But it showed me how paralyzed you must have felt to be nailed to your cross. My limitations taught me something about the limitations you endured when you laid aside your robes of state and put on the indignity of human flesh. At that point, with my strong and glorified body, I might sit in it, rub the armrests with my hands, look up at Jesus and add, 'The weaker I felt in this chair, the harder I leaned on you. And the harder I leaned, the more I discovered how strong you are. Thank you, Jesus, for learning obedience in your suffering. You gave me grace to learn obedience in mine.'" The question would be this: what are you going to do with your opportunity? Say, "Well, it's horrible and you have no idea the extent of it." It's very true. But I do happen to know the God that you serve, and I happen to know how great he is. And I know this: one day you're going to meet this lady in heaven who came out of the trial, listen, that she didn't ask for, she didn't want, and she was very vocal about that situation. She didn't want it. She wanted nothing to do with it. Let me give you something personal. Go to John chapter 9. We have 4 beautiful children. Before that, we lost 2. And that'll do something to you if you let it. We decided not to let it. It took a bit to decide that. And in the midst of that, I was mostly upset because I deemed it as this. I was in my early 20s. I hadn't gone out into the world. I hadn't got into gross sin. I had married clean and pure. And I wasn't living my life for myself. So the term unfair, it was used. It was used. I pulled it out. And I told the Lord, I said, "I'm going to need a reason from you." So he gave me one. He's good at that. John chapter 9, verse 1, this is what he gave me. "And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, 'Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?' Jesus answered, 'Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him.'" So what does God want? He might only want from you just to praise and glorify his name. Nothing great, nothing spectacular, nothing glorious. That he just might want you to praise his name. And listen, I believe that's all he wanted from that lady. Just to praise my name. just to get a little closer to me. So there's the question, what are you going to do with your opportunity? It's going to fall in a day. And in that day, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, but it's always an opportunity for you as a child of God to do something with that. And as in every opportunity, you decide what you'll do. So my question this morning, what are you going to do? Let's bow our heads this morning. I often wonder if I had lived in the time frame of these people, if what God would think of me, he thought of this woman as a great woman, great enough to be put in your Bible, for you to read about and for you to learn something from. I wonder what God thinks of your life and how you've handled the situations and the opportunities that he's given you. Some of you are in the middle of an opportunity right now, and you're still deciding what you're going to do with it. Can I help you with it? Just thank him for it. Say it's terrible. Just thank him for it. It's not a mistake. God doesn't make those. It's an opportunity for you to praise him. As the piano plays 816, if you'd stand to your feet, sing a song that we know. We know well. Probably most of you won't even grab a hymnal because you know the words. But it's "Have Thine Own Way, Lord." So I'd ask you this morning, are you willing for him to have his way? I believe this. I believe that woman would have praised him if that boy hadn't awakened. Said, well, you don't know what God's doing is true, but I know the God you serve. And I know whatever you face, good or bad, his hand's in it. And he's trying to do something with you and through you. And if you'll let him, you'll grow and you'll be closer to him than you were the day before. And that's his only heart's desire. As we sing, page 816, "Have Thine Own Way."
Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, as in thy presence humbly I bow.
I'd like to sing that fourth verse as you would, but look at the words before we do so. He says, "Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being absolute sway." I hope you mean that. What's that mean? That means whatever he wants to do, he gets to do. And there's no argument, there's no fight. He has total control. As we sing verse 4, just think about what you're singing. You're telling him, God, whatever you want to do, you can go ahead. It's okay. I can handle it because I know you're with me. I hope he has absolute sway as we sing verse number 4.
Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, absolute sway. Have thine own way, Lord, have Spirit, till all shall sing, Christ only always living in me.
We'll have the piano to begin to play. If you'd bow your heads. If people are still coming, I'm not going to quit. And I hope the end of the verse is true. Christ only always living in me. That's what God wants this world to see. That's why he left you and I here. He took Jesus Christ up to heaven, but he left him inside of you. If you're saved this morning, you have Jesus Christ inside of you. In this world, that's how they get saved. They see him. And I hope your friends, your family, your co-workers see Jesus Christ in you. That's the reason you're here. You're supposed to be the walking picture, that example that this world sees. And I hope you're that. See, how do you do that? You let him have his way. See, because when you go through something bad and you handle it right as a child of God, you blow this world's mind. It makes no sense to you why you would say that. When the doctor looked at Mike Suddeth this week and said, boy, these numbers for this blood work for your dad just don't make any sense. They shouldn't be getting better. There was only one response to that, and Mike gave the right response. He said, well, Doc, you don't know my God. Say, what is that? That's a walking example of Jesus Christ. To think that God baffles doctors, I love it. Because he's just showing as much power and control that they believe they have. It's nothing compared to what he can do. Because the move they made this week with Brother Louis, it shouldn't have got better. That was not the reason for the move. The timeline was already given. Funeral homes are already being picked out. And then they get results back and the doc goes, oh, this don't make no sense to me. You shouldn't do that. Yeah, shouldn't. But we've got a big God. And I wonder, what are you doing with your opportunity? You have one. You've got an opportunity today to live for God, to serve him, to be an example, to be a witness. Don't squander your opportunity today. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. As Pastor John mentioned in Sunday school, Pastor Sal did not intend to be gone today. It was not his plan. But he is out in Boise and will be back tomorrow. So pray for him as he flies, his favorite thing, flying. And pray for him as he comes back. He's probably getting ready to preach or preaching right now. And I'll preach again tonight. So pray for him. And pray for our services tonight. And come back and be with us. He said, I've never been to a Sunday night. Well, come back. It's nothing like right now. Nothing like it. Completely different. Say, why would you do that? Because we're wicked. We are. We're wicked. We're ungodly. We need more. And so Sunday we get it 3 different ways. You get it sliced up 3 different meals. And it'll be good for you to come back and be with us if you would. Brother Jim Toth, sir, would you dismiss us in a word of prayer?